Hello, Scott, and thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Amazingly well today. So we record this on a Monday, and yeah, buzzing to get into another week in the service accommodation world.
Well, you're an amazing guy for all kinds of reasons, and we'll touch on that. But primarily, the reason that you're here and we're talking is that because you're one of Touchstone Education's mentors. You're very much key part of our mastermind program, and we're very grateful to have you in it. But you didn't start as a mentor, did you?
No, started like everyone else as a mentee. So I can't remember. I definitely did more than 6 months as a mentee, but I definitely went through the process and saw it from the other side as well.
So when we first met way back then in Glasgow, I've lost track of time. Was it 4 years, 5 years?
I don't, years time doesn't mean anything in
No.
2020, does it? It's
But
just
you were already in property when I first met you, and
yep.
your main property business was a letting agency.
Yeah.
So sorry, go
on. No, I'm listening.
So it wasn't that you didn't know anything about property, you knew a lot about property, but in particular, you wanted to get to know a lot more about service departments, didn't you?
Yeah, so up to that point, and I think that would probably be 2015, I believe, give or take 6 months. But I had been in, residential lettings, and I set the first business up, Homesure, in 2005. So 10 years, a decade later, and it was a relatively successful business. We had a medium-sized agency, 2 high street offices on the west coast of Scotland, 500 properties we managed, and had a relatively small estate agency where we specialised in selling buy-to-let deals. So for me, we had dabbled, and we didn't call it serviced accommodation. It was just, we did corporate lets, contractor lets. We were next to an airport. So it had been something we had, I would say, informally done for many years and managed some holiday lets. But I think the very first seminar course you did was all about service accommodation. And I thought when I saw it, that just encapsulates everything I want to focus on in the business. So yes, lots of property experience then. And having done it, I was doing it very informally. So hence why we decided to come in the course.
Yeah, perfect. And you did fantastic things on the mastermind. You've gone on to set up Pillow. And your journey with Pillow has been quite incredible to watch, because you've not only set up what's one of the foremost service accommodation management companies in the UK, but you've even been across to the States a number of times, haven't you?
We have, and if anybody's seen my social media, and people always say, Scott, such a jet set, you're always in America. And the truth is, I hadn't been to America ever. Before just over a year now, so I had never been. It just so happens that we managed to get 4 trips in a year. So and that was it. That was what I love about this business, because having a letting agency would never, the first trip to Silicon Valley we won in a pitching competition. The other 3 were funded by the Scottish government, and there would just be no way that would have ever happened for a residential letting agency for me, because it was an average business.
I mean, I don't want to go into it too much, Scott, because it's maybe another topic for another day, but you had a difficult childhood, didn't you? By most people's standards. I know you don't think you did.
No, definitely. Looking back, I wouldn't change it. We've had a conversation today. Well, you've had maybe 10 years of, some hardship, but it definitely shaped me and shaped my motivation to do things in life. So, there definitely wasn't a silver spoon. There definitely wasn't help. Left school.
I mean, I think one of the reasons I'm particularly fantastically in awe of what you've achieved is that some of the crew that you used to run around with, they were a bit naughty, weren't they? There's the odd one being put in prison and whatever, but you said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do something else. And I guess your immediate ticket out of that lifestyle was joining the Navy. So I know travel, service accommodation, travel, that's part of your blood. But for a kid that was brought up in relative poverty, let's be honest here, surrounded by a gang of people that most people wouldn't want to associate with, to end up pitching to billionaires in Silicon Valley for his business. I mean, that's one hell of a journey you've had there, Scott. And it wasn't just a question of pitching for that, was it? You successfully you've got the opportunity now to take investment from big time investors to really scale your business.
Yeah, and that's a key point, is as a scalable business, what we are doing. If there's just, and I'll still love residential lettings, the team are there, but what I did for that decade in the 5 years previous working for other people, it's specifically for me, and other people would have slightly different models, but for me, the service accommodation model is infinitely scalable. I mean, we've got plans all over the UK. We are launching into a couple of US states and some overseas regions. Some of those regions and plans have changed because of lockdown, but it doesn't make the business any less scalable. And that's the thing. And we very briefly, we spoke up to the mentees, and some of the mentees said, well, yeah, I want one property. And my thing is, and I want to keep below the VAT threshold. And like, what's the point of being in a mastermind and paying this to have an £80,000 business? So
it's an £80,000 job if you keep below the VAT threshold.
And they say yes, but VAT, and I say, well, if you have an £80,000 business and you then think of your time that you're putting in, which will be double the time as a job, and then take your expenses and your profit, and I always say you'll be better working at Aldi, because your 80 grand business isn't 80 grand profit. It might be 20-30% profit margin. And in that instance, you would be better just getting a minimum wage job, and you'd have a lot less stressful life. So that's just one of the points. Having a big scalable business that has residual income is something we always talk about on the table.
100%. So your journey has been from the west coast of Scotland through to Silicon Valley, and you actually sat in Steve Jobs' office at one point, didn't you, during that whole journey?
We did, and it was just the guy that was there was a kind of billionaire guy. I throw that term out now, but when I first knew, I was so excited. And as we were leaving his office, he says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, after been there for an hour and a half, I forgot to tell you, this was Apple's old office space that I'm in. And that table you've just sat at was literally the boardroom where Steve Jobs built Apple in the early days." And having experiences like that, and being in the solicitor's office, Wilson Sonsini in San Francisco, looking out over the bay, and we said, "What's the biggest deal you've done?" He says, "This is a deal. This is the office where Microsoft bought LinkedIn." And you're sitting exactly where those guys signed the papers. And it's just a surreal experience, because you've known me from the start when I was just, I suppose, a little kid from the west coast of Scotland. But that's what a property business does for you.
That's a mastermind, Scott. So, I mean, focusing now maybe on some of your students, let's say I'm regular Joe. Let's say I'm like I am. I'm in my 50s. I've had a kind of corporate job, and I've decided, well, do you know what? I'm fed up with that. I've just been made redundant for the umpteenth time because of lockdown or whatever. I'm now going to get into service accommodation. I want you to be my mentor, Scott, because you've got massive credentials in that. I'll come and work with you for a year or whatever. As long as I'm willing to put the work in, realistically, what could I expect 12 months from now?
Well, there's two kind of types of mentees. One have money to do things with, and that makes it, it makes it slightly easier, that they have slightly different options. But I suppose a lot of people say, and they start off and say, well, I don't have money, and they don't believe there's anything that's a possibility, because they see other people with money that can buy buy-to-lets, that can buy hotels and guest houses, etc. But I mean, 75% of the people don't have money, and we take them on that journey. So there's a big whiteboard over here that was from the mastermind last week, and we literally chart out people's journey. And we do it starting today, 12 months later. And a very rough example, if someone wanted to build a rent-to-rent business or rent-to-SA without any of their own money, and again, a nice residual figures, £5,000 a month, roughly £60,000 a year, we would carry them on in their journey. And whether they stayed with me for 12 months, and again, I would say go and speak to other mentors, because there's other amazing people there. So that's the whole plan. It isn't just turning up and asking questions. It is charting out that plan and saying, well, we now know we want a residual income of £6,000. £60,000, that's £5,000 a month. How do we do it? We're going to do it to rent to SA. We need 10.
Yeah, just break it backwards. And I mean, some of the things I've seen you do over the years, and some things I've seen the students do over the years are literally astounding. So there's a guy, I don't know if you ever worked with him personally, a guy called Peter Spencer from Liverpool. And he essentially did what he was told, went from 0 to 105. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just like, if you want to learn how to do something, go find someone that's done it and then do what they tell you. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Yeah. And he went from 0 to 105 apartments within the first year, all either rent to rent or management agreement, which, and his turnover for his business in year 1 was over £3 million. And it was just stunning. And he's on about 40% profit. And that was 0 to that in 12. I mean, just literally stunning. But he's not on his own, is he? I mean, we look around the mastermind and, I mean, I haven't actually asked this question of anybody else. What's your take on the quality of what some of the other mentors are doing in the mentor group, Scott?
Mentors or mentees? Mentors. Yeah. So
your peers.
Yeah, you'll see it if you look at the Facebook forum and other places. But some of the stuff they're doing is amazing. I mean, I would say, hey, I'm the serviced accommodation guy, and I know about serviced accommodation. I don't know a lot about anything else. But even when you take Andrew Bartlett, he's got amazing units, and he isn't necessarily the SA guy. Takes Sen, and he's got lots of units and had massive occupancy during lockdown. And he isn't necessarily the SA guy, but they're still doing amazingly well in that. So. To take that one example, but always impressive to see those deals. And again, you've given me a very warm introduction and said very nice things, but the other people are massively experienced in their field as well. And it impresses me even more because I don't know about commercial conversion or renovating and flips. It's not my thing. So to see them doing it, and before lockdown, we were encouraged to go and spend some time and go on everyone else's courses and get to know their strategies as well. So I might not have been in their table, but I've been on their courses and they're massively knowledgeable. So and
it is inspiring, isn't it? Because that's like the mentors themselves have got their own mastermind where they all bounce off each other and spend time and do stuff. So, okay, so if we just begin to wrap this up, Scott, I'm thinking really from a perspective of, I don't know, maybe I've done a course or maybe I've done some online study or something. And I'm thinking, well, that's good. But on your own, it's quite hard. So just in terms of next steps, if somebody asks you for advice, they've maybe done the service accommodation boot camp or something, and they've maybe got their very first service accommodation unit, but they've only got one. What should they do next?
You hear a lot of people that have done courses and they don't really implement it. So for me, when people come in the mastermind and they've done some courses, they have the basic knowledge. You've put a lot of focus on me as well, but actually that's coaching, that's kind of mentorship. But what the mastermind provides is a mastermind. So when they join that course, it's not just me they get, it's the other 7 people around the table as well. So I'm not saying people can't fail to be successful, but if you commit monthly to your mentor, which is just, I'm the facilitator, and all the other people that are sharing the same journey as you, you're going to multiply your chances of success. Because again, you've been speaking about me, but everyone else on that table have done amazing things. And sometimes I sit there as the SA guy and he's like, I've got 40 units, or I've only got one property, Scott, but it's worth 1.8 million. So it's everything. It's your speech at the start of the day. It's the other mentors. It's the people that can come in and drop in the tables as well. So the finance person can come in and answer questions. And we've seen that. Somebody, Scott, I can't get a mortgage. It's impossible. I can't do anything. And Paul's come in and got them an offer in principle by that lunchtime. So it's the whole network of everyone, and not necessarily just me at our table, but so just go and do it. And my thing is, I was skeptical, thinking, well, I know a little bit about property, why would I pay all that money for a mastermind? But I actually made my money back on my very first session, and I had a very specific question I needed answers about higher stuff like business structure and acquiring properties and where to put them in. And of my 6 months mastermind, I made my money back in the very first hour. In fact, the first 10 minutes, I asked very specific questions, and that if I hadn't done anything else, I would have made my money 10 times back on the first hour.
That is such a great resume of everything that goes on. The only reason I was laughing there is I wouldn't want people to expect to get their entire annual payment back in the first 10 minutes. You're setting the bar quite high there, but yeah, it happened to you. So that's just.
Well, that's as you say, the action is, yes, there's two things. One, you need to commit to it and sign up to it. But there have been people that sign up to it and their head isn't in the right place and they don't take advantage. So I planned, I'm like, how could I get this money back? And what would the mentor that I had, what's his skills and experience? And it was a tax question and business structure, and it instantly saved me the money back, but it allowed me to pay less tax in the future. So me saying, oh, the best bit of advice I could give them is sign up and do it. But signing up that's the easy thing. Paying some money on a credit card is the easy thing, but you need to turn up, plan the sessions, and actually take the benefit of them.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back over the years, Scott, there's been some absolutely monumental tax rebates specifically from serviced accommodation. I'm thinking of people like Nigel Griffiths. I'm thinking of people like Minesh. There's people that they've had tax rebates of hundreds of thousands of pounds. I mean, Nigel, don't know if you remember Nigel, but he had some foreign holiday properties. So he had a very nice villa on Lake Como. Plus he had some holiday cottages in Kent and this, that, and the other thing. And that was more than £600,000 of tax rebates. It was just off the scale. And even more recently, I was speaking to one of the lovely masterminders, a guy called Indy, who's just coming towards the end of his mastermind. Yeah. And I was talking to him last week, I think it was. And what he did, I made him homeless. I hear that quite a lot because he had a 5-bedroom family, detached family property in Bradford. Found out all about service accommodation. Decided to go and buy another house to live in. So I'm joking, I made him homeless. But all he did was he put that 5-bed in Bradford, which that's not a holiday area, is it? Bradford. He's put that as a service accommodation. He's making the money out of service accommodation. But just on that one property, he got an £18,000 tax rebate as well as everything else. So quite often all it takes with service accommodation is one property and you'll cover everything many times over.
I won't go into details, but this is left over from last week, and the person had a £250,000 property, and we worked it out with various tax things, and I won't bore you with it, but the number they got was they'll pay £74,000 less in tax, and they didn't know about capital allowances, they didn't know about Section 24, and it was a very simple thing. Had they not been on that mastermind, next year they would have paid more than £74,000 in tax minimum over the next 5 years. So it's powerful.
Quite scary, isn't it? So,
and it's the last thing is, I always say to guys, they say, Scott, service accommodation, how many spoons do you need? And I'll say, a £5 conversation versus a £50,000 conversation. How do you want to spend your time? Do you want to talk about whether you should take pets, or do you want to find out how to do that and make £50,000? And that's the last thing of advice. Don't go to any mentor's table and have £5 conversations, have £50,000 conversations, because you can have them so easily.
Scott, pleasure as always. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers, guys. And I look forward to seeing you in a mastermind soon. Cheers, guys. Bye.